David, please.
Thank you. I think we're between you and your first drink of the evening, so thanks for staying.
Yeah, we'll be brief, maybe not, hopefully not too brief. David, thank you very much
for joining
us at the Future Brands today.
Great to be here.
Thank you, audience, for joining us. We will have audience Q&A towards the end, so please, my eyesight isn't what it used to be, so please just wave your hands furiously, and we have a roving mic to help you with that. But if you don't worry, because I've got lots of questions for David here. And David obviously needs no introduction to people in this industry, but he's one of the few people I get to interview nowadays who has a Wikipedia page. So if you go on his Wikipedia page, it's very interesting indeed. So I'll just mention some companies he's either run or launched. Discovery, TLC, Channel 4, Chiat Day, now TBWA, St. Luke's, Collett Dickinson Pierce. So he's been around.
Dave,
yeah. So he's going to throw out lots that I've not mentioned. So he's worked on both sides of the fence, as it were, in terms of agency land, media owner. I can tell you he's got lots to say about the state of the industry. And thank you very much for doing this last minute. Many of you that would have signed up for this would have expected me to be talking to Niels Leonard today, but I hope you agree that's a very good substitute indeed. So we're really grateful for doing this last minute.
Pleasure.
So let's get straight into it. How do you see the state of marketing in 2024 and beyond?
Well, we just sat in on the last two sessions, and clearly there's a huge amount of excitement and possibility around how technology is affecting marketing, and it's creating lots of interesting creative opportunities. But just taking a step back, because I suppose I'm here representing the whatever the word would be, the kind of big idea part of the industry, the people who are here to tell stories and to engage at a cultural level. And we all have talked, I think, about how these two parts of the industry, when they work together, they can affect businesses and affect real change. But just stepping back, because I'm sadly old enough to remember an industry that did have a different shape 20 or 30 years ago. I think a year ago you had John Hegarty doing the same session. And there's no doubt about it that in those days, when I was starting in media, there were gatekeepers for culture. People would go home in the evening and the average television audience was 20 million, 25 million. A very big audience might have been 30 million. Newspapers were read by many more people. Obviously, our attention wasn't distracted by all the devices and screens that we have today. And that, combined with the amazing opportunities that platforms like YouTube provide for individuals to be heard and to have their voice, means that obviously the job of communications has changed fundamentally. I think last year you had a debate with John about fragmentation, and his point was, fragmentation's always been around. We've had posters, radio, cinema, so we've always had these choices. But there's no doubt about it, whether you're launching a movie, a TV show, a brand, a product, a service, a restaurant, your ability to reach a mass audience is far more complex now than ever before. And for that reason, I think we do need to thread together the disciplines that we're all part of in a different way. And that was really the reason why I set up Wonderhood Studios, because as a client, I suppose, a brand owner of Channel 4, what I saw was so many different factors in play. In-house, because we had 4Creative as an in-house capability. Obviously, we were managing our own brand, but we were managing it across different platforms as all four began to evolve and as the data strategy began to evolve. And what I found was that when we made a difference, whether it was the Paralympic Games or launching shows like Gogglebox or being involved in Oscar-winning movies, it was because we'd successfully joined the dots together of all the different creative ideas, technology platforms, and data layers in a holistic and coherent way. And it's hard. It's really, really hard. I think it's hard if you're a brand owner and a client, and I think it's hard if you're in the agency world, because often we are in silos and in specialisms, and we struggle to get everyone together in a room. At the end of the last session, there was this conversation about we need storytelling and we need to get people in a room. That, for me, is, I suppose, the thing that hasn't changed. If we do that well, we can have real impact on culture, we can have real impact on business. And also, let's face it, we can have fun. Because this is a team game, marketing. We make real impact when we work together successfully behind and make ideas happen and use all of the possibilities of the amazing technology that now is unfolding us around us.
Yeah, and I think that word fun I really hit upon as well, because God, I've been covering this industry for the best part of 10 years now, and that's flown by. And so when I first started writing about this industry, I was very kind of intrigued by the creative side of it, and how do these creatives come up with ideas? And I just imagine, people smoking barbiturates in a room somewhere and just coming up with off the wall things. And the reality, as I discovered over years since, it's very much not like that. Maybe it used to be, I don't know. But I'm fascinated. Before lunch in the creativity room, we were having, I had 2 panels about creative media coming together. Should they? How do they? And a lot of the angst came from the fact that you just don't have, whether they're within the same company or from different companies, creative media, they're not really having that fruitful discussion at the start of the process working with a marketing company.
100% agree. 100% agree.
From your perspective, why is that?
I think it's because we've got to look back at the source of talent, and where do really talented writers and photographers and dramatists, where do they live? Where do they hang out? Now, again, I'm old enough to remember the interplay within the advertising business of movie makers and on-screen talent into the ad world, which was very dynamic and very real. And some of our greatest filmmakers in this country, like Ridley Scott, before they made their first movie, they had made 300 commercials. So the interplay between different parts of the media industry used to be more dynamic. And I think what's happened, and again, I don't want to create an argument early in the session with our colleagues from media agencies, but I'm not convinced that media agencies can attract the kind of high-end creative talent that a really good creative agency can do, because there's just a different cadence to how the work works and why people are attracted to it, and the environment that you create for really great storytellers to operate in. I think it's important that creative agencies do that well and bring talent to clients that they themselves perhaps couldn't attract. I had a brilliant conversation a few weeks ago with a senior client around the in-house conversation, and they've got great designers, they've got great social media specialists, and clearly that's a trend that continues to develop, as it did indeed at Channel 4. However, when it came to thinking through the big cultural impact idea and having brand strategists that have the agility to work across different industries, it definitely is a benefit to go externally and to work with a group of talent that are attracted to working in a particularly high-end creative environment. And so it's great that Britain still is really good at that, because that's one of the key strengths of our industry.
Yeah. Do you think the industry's less fun than it used to be?
I think it's got more technical and more challenging, and clearly there's more data and analysis that's involved in everything we do, which is part of the reason why I think we should remind ourselves that it needs to be fun, and it should be an environment where people can express themselves. I think the fashion industry has continued to demonstrate through the value of the brands that they've been creating over the last few decades that you can put really talented creative people into a business environment and create huge amounts of brand value by allowing them to do what they're really good at, which is to design, create beauty, create delight, and do it in a visually really stunning and impactful way. That's created one of the most valuable companies on the planet right now, LVMH. It's been done through putting creativity at the front of the process.
Yeah.
And similarly, in film and television, the value of our industry has been driven by the liberation that's happened through platforms like Netflix and YouTube that have really been creative powerhouses in very different ways, but they have given individuals their voice to express themselves in amazing ways.
Yes, and we'll get into the state of broadcast TV, Channel 4, which you know very well, obviously. Before we do that, let's talk about your business now. So Wonderhood Studios, just to give you a flavour of what Wonderhood Studios does. So your part creative ad agency, part production company.
Yeah, I mean, I set the business up really because as a client, I was thinking, right, if I could start with a blank sheet of paper, what would I need? I'd need start with data insight at the center of it. I'd have brilliant designers, great above-the-line advertising, big ideas people and strategists, but I would also have people who do medium and long-form storytelling really well. Where do they come from? They come from television. They really understand how to sustain a story over a long period of time. And that's very analogous to how you tell a brand story in a digital environment over a sustained period of time. You've got to keep telling your story, delighting and exciting in episodic ways. It's very analogous to how television works. So I put all that together 5 years ago, and we created Wonderhood Studios. And I think this little tape gives you a bit of a flavour.
Let's just give people
All the work on this is work we've produced over the last 4 or 5 years. And so the combination of advertising work and television work for a number of different channels.
Yeah, let's just have a bit of a look at this just to give people an idea.
Great.
All right, you get the idea. It's all brilliant. It's all brilliant. Right, so you've explained the proposition. How distinctive do you think agencies need to be in the market nowadays?
Very. They need to be relevant. They need to take a client conversation to a place that the client knows it needs to get to but can't do so on their own in a collaborative way by introducing strategic thinking and creative talent into the conversation. And we all know, because every day of the week, people knock on our door to say, right, we know this fragmentation challenge is real, but we do have a product proposition that we know is meaningful. Take Starling Bank, as they were 5 years ago. They had grown as a digital-first challenger bank. They had done a good job, but as we know, they needed to widen the top of the funnel and reach more people and create more brand affinity and more brand fame. And through a series of campaigns, we have consistently grown them into being a bank that is now, reaching millions of people and is growing at an amazing rate and is making a real impact on what a digital-first, app-first challenger bank can actually be. And so in reality, could they have done that had they stayed within the confines of all the programmatic and precision-based marketing tools that were available to a new brand in that space? They could have done so up to a certain point, but then they would have hit a wall and they needed to reach out further. So what skills do you optimally need to organize in order to take that step? And that's where creative agencies, I think, remain a really important part of the mix. The key challenge has been the quality of the collaboration with all of the other functions that are surrounding the client, both internally and externally. And I think for us, the quality of collaboration is really, really important, because maintaining the power of a big idea and navigating it through all the complex layers and all those channels isn't easy. So that each of those different media environments surprises and delights as much as the potential of the big idea deserves to be. And that's how you really do create long-term brand value, because, of course, a lot of these medias are very good at actualizing sales now, but the power of the brand is to create brand equity that will last over years and ideally over decades. That's how real value is created, because memory structures can be embedded over very sustained periods of time. So the best advertising, and not all advertising can do this, but the best advertising can reach you at such a deep emotive level that you will remember that core idea that surrounds that brand for the rest of your life. And the ROI that comes from, therefore, a very powerful piece of creative can lift the effectiveness of everything else 4 or 5 times. All of the effectiveness studies I've ever seen in my entire career prove that again and again and again. So to aim low with your creativity, to say that, well, we put the right message in the right point at the right moment, and all it is a tile with a pack shot, isn't creativity. That's brilliant creative media planning and buying, but it doesn't create the multiplier effect.
So just to be clear, you don't do any of that?
We do, because we are coming up with brand platforms and then working very hard with our clients and their media specialists and our own data insight teams to ensure that the possibility of those big brand ideas filters through to all of those innovative media placements. It's the combination of a fantastic idea and the creativity of those media options that creates value and creates really positive ROI. But I think, to go back to your earlier question, the challenge has been that we've fallen into the trap of having to put so much attention into the technicality of all of those media choices that when it comes to, well, what actually is going to go in the box, we just sort of, well, pack shot brand, it's red. And that's tick, we've done that. That is creative. That is not creative. It might be design, but it's not creative. Creative is an idea that actually creates memory structures that create brand equity over time. And when you're valuing a brand, it is the long-term value of that brand equity, the affinity, the sense of quality you attach to it, the fact that you might have grown up with that brand over decades. That's how real value is created, and that goes back to the value of the role of the creative agency when it's doing its job well.
So what would you say is the biggest challenge that you face now? So you've launched this business 2017, did you say?
2018. Well, I mean, the biggest challenge was obviously COVID. It's just surviving. I mean, it was just, we're an independent business and, backed with my own savings. So it's kind of,
and since you left Channel 4, was that the first business that you launched? Did you try to do others?
I actually was a co-founder of St. Luke's back in the 90s as a management buyout, and so
since Channel 4, when you left Channel 4?
No, it's the first pure startup I've ever done. Slightly mad to be doing it at my age, but
yeah. Why did you do it?
Because it's fun, and because I love being in this space of art and commerce. What we also do, in addition to our advertising work, is that we produce high-end documentaries and factual programs for BBC and Channel 4. We've just been nominated.
Channel 4 is like your big client because
it is a buyer of what we do, and but most of our business is elsewhere. We've just been nominated for a BAFTA for a documentary series we made about the British Army evacuating from Kabul, which is extraordinary. We make a series called Super Surgeons, which is interestingly co-funded with Macmillan, where, again, whilst we are, I would regard, a very high-end creative agency, we're also a high-end TV producer. We're the only company in Britain to be a top 20 independent agency and a top 20 independent producer. And I felt that was, thank you.
Round of applause.
And I thought that was an important thing to do, because, again, if you're going to operate in culture, if you're going to be a storyteller, you better hire some people who know about storytelling. And actually...
Yeah, where did you get these people from? Where are they?
BBC, Channel 4, America. I mean, I've run networks in America. So basically, I know a lot of producers, and I've said to them, why don't you come and work here? Because actually, you'll not only...
Are they not sniffy about working in advertising, ad-funded programs?
That's a very good question, because, of course, there is a little bit of, who are these people? It's a bit commercial over here, or the ad people. But in actual fact, I've always found, and I saw this very much when I was at Channel 4, is like really people who are very good at understanding interruptive media, i.e. I'll get my message compressed into 30 seconds or 60 seconds. They're very similar to people who can, make a movie over 90 minutes. The difference being it's about concentration versus sustaining a story, but it's still about what is the idea and how we're going to tell it. And obviously a lot of the craft skills are the same. You need cameras, you need editors, you need lighting, you need story, you need music. So the emotional sort of craft arts are very, very similar. So if you come into Wonderhood Studios in Archer Street in Soho, you're in a 4-story building where people are thinking of interruptive content, mid-form content. We just did a beautiful thing with Vinnie Jones with Chelsea and the Samaritans, and if you saw it, had 31 million views. It's a mid-form piece of content. It's about mental health and football, and it used all of the skills of sort of sharing and social-driven content generation. But it's great performance and it's great storytelling. And then we also make TV series as well, that are multiple episodes over multiple years. So we're seeing all of these things in context. And the research we're doing is exciting because what it shows is if a brand chooses to co-fund long-form content, it can then sponsor and advertise within that content. And then what happens is the viewer is enjoying the content as entertainment, but is then immersed in the more strategic messages that the brand wants to convey as a sponsor, but also in terms of product placement. And that all came together really well with our series Super Surgeons, which we made with Macmillan.
Is this got another
health warning? Health warning. That looks... So if anyone has been affected by cancer, as many of us have, or is squeamish about surgery shows, probably look at their phones for a minute. But this is a case history film project we did with Macmillan and Channel 4.
Okay.
We've got a hole in the bone. Okay, hold it, please.
You try your utmost to save every life coming your way because you realize how fragile life is.
We have quite a communication challenge in terms of what we do and therefore the relevance to people. I would describe Macmillan as frontline. Macmillan provide a really wide range of services. We have a big call centre and we have cancer information specialist nurses as well.
We find humour in this all.
Oh, I think you have to, don't you?
I think that the show really contextualised what Macmillan do. It enabled us to show our cancer support services at their best and really show that we're not just about nurses, we're not just about palliative care.
Well, it's good news. I'm cancer-free. And I just want to go and shout and tell everybody, I'm free, I'm free.
It's certainly given us a lot more confidence to work in more innovative formats. It's helped us extend support to people living with cancer.
That's good going. Oh gosh, no, that hurts.
Okay. You lot are so nice, aren't you? Round of applause. That's the second one so far. Let's try and get the third. No, so that, to be clear, that was ad-funded programming.
So that's ad-funded programming. We call it premium branded entertainment. So that's a primetime show. We've just made season 2. It'll go on air in the next few weeks, and it's a series that has product placement in it because you do see Macmillan nurses and you see some of the services and support that Macmillan do, which they felt they couldn't have done in an ad campaign alone. They do some brilliant advertising, which is very good at fundraising. This was more part of the longer term education investments that they wanted to make to explain how they support people living with cancer across the UK. And the research we've done really reinforces a number of things, which is obviously if you want to be in culture, you have to reach, the reach is important, but then the way in which you activate that can be through your own paid and owned channels. If you can combine editorial partnerships with paid and owned, then there's a really kind of big multiplier effect. And of course, in a very different way, the success of movies like the Barbie movie, or now I think we're going to see a Monopoly movie coming quite soon. I've just read. Is an example in a different genre, obviously, of how brands are thinking really imaginatively about how they can actually operate in a very kind of high-end storytelling environment. Now, brands have been doing this a lot in sports sponsorship for a long time, and we're just very excited about the possibility of combining these different formats together, and we're having a number of very interesting conversations with big global companies about them making feature-length documentaries, for example, at a global scale, but then taking that content and really helping to drive it into their paid and owned channels to activate in a very sort of highly branded way. So, I mean, it's in a way things have come full circle. You know, we all remember the origin of the phrase soap opera was it was big manufacturing, big brand owners needing to create an audience environment into which they could put advertising, and they directly funded these things called soap operas that would come back every day. And a lot of media around the world, in other parts of the world, is still funded directly by brands. Now, of course, you can debate the ethics of whether or not a brand should be sort of editorially controlling media, and I think it's right that we've got some controls and separations over that. But particularly in linear TV right now, innovative partnerships, I think, are going to be a bigger part of the future.
Yeah, do you think current regulations should be relaxed to allow for more than that? It's something that broadcasters have been lobbying for years.
Yeah, so when I was at 4, there was a big regulatory change that allowed product placement. So there's a little P that comes up at the beginning of that show that says that the brand has been directly funding into the show.
Yeah, but you can Channel 4 broadcasters, PSBs, they're competing against Netflix where you don't have anything.
Well, that's a very good point, because of course now, because of the evolution of streaming TV, they are introducing ad layers into their services. So now advertisers are beginning to have opportunities to sponsor and put commercial messaging into what was seamless streaming television. I think we're at a very interesting juncture for that point. I mean, I don't know about you, I was on Amazon the other day, and just suddenly an ad came up, and I was reminded that, if I didn't want to see this, I'm going to have to start paying a bit more. Now, that's happening across the board, and I think in the challenge, the creative challenge for everyone, whether you're a brand owner or an agency person, is how do we do that in a way that's delightful, creative, fun, and interesting and different, rather than, frankly, interruptive and annoying? And, my fear is that we are confusing lots of different things at the moment, because reach isn't really impact. When we are scrolling in a very fleeting way and we see a tile with a brand and a pack shot on it, we mustn't over measure that and say that is a meaningful level of impact. It may be an exposure, but I think without the big idea that kind of, that sort of reminds you of a memory structure of that something you're emotionally engaged with, is nothing other than clutter. And we know, because of cookies, that clutter have become a huge issue. And whilst I think I applaud the whole concept of retail media, and it's really good, we all know, don't we, that actually if we are in any of the environments where we're having media sort of pushed at us as an interruption, that we will do what we can to avoid it. So for me, it reinforces the need for entertainment and big ideas and amazing craft to make, in a sense, all these messages more memorable and palatable and acceptable.
Yeah. I'll open up in a sec to audience questions if any of you have a question for David Abraham. But before I do, so on Channel 4, so you must be watching with great interest in what's happening at your old company. And obviously you've got skin in the game as an independent production company. They've all but ceased commissioning new stuff until 2025, they say. How concerned are you about the state of Channel 4, where it looks like the battle's been won with avoiding privatisation, which I think it's fair to say very few people in this industry actually wanted. But going forward, Lord Grade, one of your predecessors there, now chair of Ofcom, described it as a corner shop competing against global supermarket chains. How do you see the challenge for Channel 4 going forward?
Look, I'm clearly, I believe in creative originality and creating hits and doing things differently. And I think that we should never underestimate this country's ability to produce really valuable IP that can be exported around the world, which was one of the main purposes of Channel 4 from a business perspective, that it was an opportunity, created opportunities for independent producers to create IP. It can and is still doing that, but it is definitely harder. And funnily enough, my one observation would be that when you're running a network, you have to sort of place your bets in a very strategic way, and you have to market things in a way. You have to market your content in a way that has real conviction and impact. And I think, the whole media industry needs Channel 4 because it is an environment in which we can innovate and try new things. And I think that there's no doubt about it, with good ideas and good marketing, Channel 4 can continue to thrive. And by the way, it's also a very important independent news provider, and it's a very important and powerful and Oscar-winning developer of British independent movies as well. So for cultural reasons as well as business reasons, I think it remains a force to be reckoned with.
But does the remit need to change to make it more commercially viable?
Well, there's debates going on at the moment as to whether or not they should produce, Channel 4 should be given the freedom to produce more of its own programmes, which it never has done before. That's an interesting one.
Do you think they should be allowed to?
My own view is that the independent sector is a good provider to Channel 4 currently.
What would David Abraham, if he was still running Channel 4, say, do you think?
I probably would say that as well. Look, when I was there, our big focus was on generating big hits, being aggressive on sort of building new franchises like Formula One and getting Bake Off, which we did towards the end. But we had to rebuild the schedule post Big Brother. Big Brother had been on the network for 10 years. Our challenge, going back to 2010, was how do you build a new range of hits? And we were, over a number of years, we did rebuild the schedule quite successfully and maintain the creative quality. There's no doubt about it. There is more competition now. But on the other hand, it's still the case across the world that people primarily like to watch television about their own communities, their own countries, their own environments. And so the BBC, Channel 4, ITV have a natural advantage. And I think if you just look at, for example, the impact of the Post Office drama on British politics recently, it's a brilliant reminder of the power of national television in a democratic society to stimulate progress and also for a country to sort of do the right thing.
Still though, Squid Game. Come on. No, point is taken. Yeah. Does anyone have a question for David Abraham? It's okay if you don't. I've got loads. I've got absolutely loads. Oh, question here.
Yeah, this is Shocker.
There's a microphone, don't worry.
Hello, hi. This is Shocker Henry from Rep That Television. We're a Black British streaming platform.
Hi.
We are completely independent. We sell our stuff to Sky. We have our own studios. Sometimes I struggle when I'm doing things to find what is my why. So I wanted to ask, what is your why when you're facing struggle and adversity?
What is your why?
That's a great question. Listen, I've been in this business I'm now in my 4th decade, and I think it is about people. If you work with people, if you come in the morning, or you're now some of the time on a Zoom, and you're taken away from the day-to-day and you're just absorbing solving problems in a creative way, in a fantastic team, and you're coming up with ideas that then become programs and films and video and campaigns, that's a privilege. There's nothing more amazing than to be part of that when it works. Now layer over that running your own business and the highs and lows of that. When things go well, it's a very unique thing, and you go home and then people have noticed what you've done. They talk about it, and you feel you're making a contribution to how society is changing and evolving and improving. That's a very unique privilege, and I think all of us in media, we've all got our responsibilities and our KPIs, and we've all got to be accountable. But actually, in the process of doing that, you can do that in a way that is socially and culturally positive. And you can take great pride in that, as I'm sure you do, and you can feel you're making a difference. So that's probably a long-winded way of saying what my why is. But it's a great question.
Does anyone else have a question? Just stick your hand up. Denise has a question there.
Hi, Denise Turner. I run the outdoor audience measurement, but I've been really struck today by the sort of intersection between certainty and uncertainty. And there was a chap from Boots who talked earlier about traditions are experiments that we that have worked. So, how do you, challenge, because you create stuff that you're not ever certain is going to work, do you? But you have loads of experience that it does. So how do you transition between certainty and uncertainty, and how do you persuade people to
Take the leap.
Take the leap,
Yeah.
because actually you don't know for certain, do you?
No, it's a great question. And that's why we did put data insight at the heart of the company on day one, because I've always believed throughout my first chapter was in creative agencies and worked a lot with brilliant planners and strategists. My second chapter was in broadcasting. And I experimented a lot with the role of data and strategy to inform a brief, and also to understand why and how something worked. And also the way in which you can use data science to avoid making really big mistakes. And you can also use data and insight to know when you're onto something so that you double down on it and you really go for it in terms of, we're going to spend more money on marketing this because it can be a hit. And that was pretty much my day job for over a decade, which is you've got hundreds of program choices. Which ones are you really going to get behind and make famous, because it's content marketing decisions across a whole range of schedules. So I think, having said that, also there is such a thing as gut and experience and talent. And so, half my day is, have we hired the right people? Have we got the right culture? Are we motivating people to do good work? When clients become jittery or nervous, how can we work with them to inspire them to take the risks that we collectively want to take? Because no client at the end of running a campaign, when everyone goes, well, that was okay, wasn't it? I have never met a client who set out to do that, even if the process ends up there. So we do need to be better, I think, collectively, of understanding when we really believe in an idea, go out on a limb. You take a personal risk, stand up for your convictions, and you will find that being, going back to the previous question, very rewarding, because when something does work, you will know that you owned a part of that. And of course, the funny thing about our world is when something really works, everyone owns it. Everyone was part of it. And when it doesn't, it's a sort of tumbleweed. But if you stick at it, and I'm not talking about reckless risk-taking, I'm just talking about consistent, calculated risk. I used to talk about controlled explosions. At Channel 4, we used to do a lot of things that were physically and politically very risky. I remember once I had to sign off on a documentary where it was called The Plane Crash, and we were literally automating an airliner and crashing it deliberately into a desert to see what happened inside a plane when you crashed it with cameras. And you can imagine the sort of physical risk involved in doing that. Or indeed, when we were about to launch the Paralympic Games in 2012, believing that we could make it as big an event as the Olympic Games, and we had no clue whether that was actually physically possible or culturally possible. But sometimes you find yourself in well, I'm here now. I'm going to have to just really believe in what I believed in and go for it, and be prepared to fail some of the time. Hopefully, you won't succeed all of the time, but don't be worried about failing some of the time if you've done the homework and the prep and you've done your best with the brief and you've looked at all data insight and it doesn't work. Because I don't think you'd ever get fired by a client for doing that. And it just might be that the learning you get from that will lead you to something that could become a really big breakthrough. Because as with science, everything is based on trial and error, experimentation, and building on success. And I think we are at a point, in the ad industry in particular at the moment, where we need more of that.
I was going to ask you, just as a final addendum to that, do you think this industry has become just too safe? Too risk-averse?
I think to a degree, in some areas, there's still good work being done, and there's still fantastic thinking, and where technology and data and creativity are coming together really well, so that we can still be inspired by what is good. But I think there is less of it. There is definitely more mediocrity, and there's definitely more of a confusion between reach and impact. there's too much, well, we reached this number of people, we've had this number of views. Well, great, but did it really move the dial culturally? Did it really imbue our brand with some long-term perception uplift, which is going to create massive ROI gains exponentially in the future? And the best campaigns do that. The best campaigns create effects that last 5 to 10 years. And that's I think it's a struggle for many big brand owners to work out what is that big North Star that you stick at. Like, for example, Tesco clearly stuck with that big idea for over a decade now, but make it sufficiently agile for it to work in a whole different series of use cases. And a lot of our work is done is like, what's the meta idea, but how do you also operate in a real-time, real-world way where you have to adapt that into lots of different settings? I think, unfortunately, too many brands don't have the big idea, so they're just in the weeds of the day-to-day, and it's not laddering up into anything which actually represents proper brand equity. And that's where and I think because everyone's now saying, well, linear TV is dying, I mean, they've been saying it for 20 years, it's never going to die. It's always going to be around. But AV is definitely not dying. AV is exponentially expanding, and the opportunities of AV continue to get much more exciting. And therefore, for us, it's now about orchestration. How do you get all these brilliant sub-disciplines to work together in a coherent way? It's about bringing it together behind the big idea and then allowing each different team to be brilliant at what it does. That is the biggest challenge we're all facing, and that is why Wonderhood Studios exists.
And good plug right at the end. Well done for that. You can tell he knows the things about advertising. Thank you so much. You've been a brilliant audience. Thank you so much. And thank you to David Abraham. Thank you.